Okay, so we'll do this in steps. It's as much of an exploration as prepped demo, so I'll probably be very clunky, but I'll try and be fast. So first things first, if you've not installed and used Claude Code before, it's a very specific tool, command line tool, that you can install by having Node on your machine and then just doing a package install of Anthropic AI Claude Code. This page right here is important. I'll make sure the URL is handy somewhere, but docs.anthropic.com, blah, 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 English docs, Claude Code overview. It doesn't take long to get the handle on this. Basically, you'll end up probably running it from like a VS Code or whatever your favorite IDE is. It works with several of them, but basically open a terminal window, type in Claude, and from there on you're just engaging with Claude like you would any other interactive tool, with the exception that Claude is actually able to manipulate all the files in your project, folders in your project, do commands for you. It will do Git, PR stuff and everything, just everything possible. And you can set it up in a planning mode so that it's easy to deal with. I will recommend ignore me and just go right onto something like I have a nice getting started thing here. There it is, the quick start. If you go in there, you'll see the range of things that are possible and all sorts of other examples. And as you would imagine, there's tons of things on YouTube specifically. It's just be sure to look for Claude Code. I happen to be at the $20 level, which is the bottom feeder cache level. They have a $100 and a $200 level for people that are really going to be using this all the time. And frankly, I think if you can justify that you're in front of the keyboard for most of your job, easily will make that $200 well worth it, because you're getting better models, two, you're getting more tokens or more time with the models to be able to get things done. So I'll stop it with that, and we'll go ahead and get started with our project. So it'll be just step one first, and then we'll just move it on stepwise. So I'm just in a little working space of my own here. Let me see that. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm just going to make an empty folder, and we'll just get started that way. There's plenty of ways to get Claude interested too. So I'll just say it, mkdir, and I'll just do a demo cc for demo Claude Code. Okay. We'll cd into dcc, and here I'm using VS Code, so I'm just going to do a code dot and bring up VS Code here. Okay. And I'll say, I should have probably done that a long time ago. Sure, I trust the authors. All right, so we're looking here, DCC. Don't confuse that with the word doc. And it's the usual kind of starter. I'm going to actually get rid of Copilot right now. Go that window. All right, so we've got empty, totally empty thing. I'm just going to do a new terminal. I'm down here. And when it comes up, I'll introduce Claude by just running the Claude command. So do I trust everything here? Sure. And then specifically, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with a big prompt, but we're going to stop using prompts and move on to document-based guidance for it to refer to, and then to make use of, like spec-based. Okay, but I'm not getting super formal, just to show that we can both be interactive with it, and then also have it refer to our documentation of what we want. So here, bear with me as I type up a description of what I'd like, which would be a simple app that will be two parts. One, we'll say an API that sits on AWS that simply has one endpoint that gives you back a random quote when asked, and then like famous quote, and then the simple app that runs like a Flutter app that has a main page and a little button, and every time you hit the button to get a random quote, it actually goes off, talks to that API, comes back with the result, and displays it on the same page. Keep it real straightforward. Should be able to be done in no time to have these two things working. Okay, so let me just type this up. I may cut the screen and come back in a second. Okay. By the way, if we had worked with a real project, like for instance, connect to a repo, in this case, with lots of existing code, you'd simply do a /init, and it would basically cruise through all your code, everything, and then set up a Claude MD file, which we will add later for ourselves because we're coming from scratch. But it would actually, basically familiarize itself with all of your code in moments, and then start the process of documenting what it thinks, for instance, the project hierarchy is, and what it's about, what its purpose is, what are the main architectural components. Just insane. So that's worth looking at too. Maybe run on a body of code that you already have. Is what we're trying. Okay, let me type my prompt. Okay, so finished typing this prompt. Again, I didn't want to have you suffer through it, so I've done nothing else except type that in, fix my typos, etc., could be a real burden to watch. In short, I described the two parts of this application we're building. One is going to be an AWS resident API that basically through the API Gateway allows us to invoke effectively a Lambda that's going to return a random code. We're going to make a real simple implementation of that. We're actually going to let Claude make a simple implementation of that. We'll do that in a future section. And then we'll also have it create the Flutter app later too. And we're going to, again, simple Flutter app that's simply going to have a home page that has a button and a label. And every time you hit the button, it's going to use that API. It's going to get a result, and it's going to change the label. That simple. But again, we're not going to do any of the work. We're going to let it do all the work. I'm not going to get too deep into specking to make sure we have tests and that we have the test driven or test run and worked on every time we make a commit or anything like that. But that's exactly the sort of rules that we can set up to require Claude to kind of follow the same discipline that we expect our engineers to do. I'm just kind of getting through this real fast today to show how interactive it can be and how it can be relied upon to do most if not all of the work. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give this a go. Notice at the end I did say that please document everything in a README MD. So it'll take this prompt and transform it into something that looks a little more readable to somebody coming in that's unfamiliar with the project. But again, I'm not going to have to write the MD, at least for starters. We'll add to it later when we want to get specifics. Okay, here we go. So I see it working. It's using tokens again at this point, and everybody's level depends. You get different access to it depending on the level you're at. But here it's making a project structure, set up AWS API Gateway infrastructure. It's actually going way too far. I didn't want it to go this far. I should have told it to stop, but that's okay. But actually, the README is all I really want right now. I don't want the other stuff. So hopefully it won't do the other things as well. But if it does, it does. Here we go. Yeah, see, it's going to make basically our structure for the AWS side. I'm going to go ahead and let it go. And we can always revise it later if we don't like what it does. It's going to make that function. Simple thing would probably be like quote.py or something like that. Let's see, there it is. I'm going to let it rip. So it's the template for doing a CloudFormation. I'm going to say yes to that. Again, you could force it if you like Terraform instead. You could go Terraform instead. Let's see. Go ahead. Let me take a look at what it thinks it's doing here. Okay, sure. So it's coming up with our Python dependencies. Again, we're going to implement or have it implement just, an array of random quotes and pick a random entry from that array to keep it simple. Okay. There we go. It's already decided to do that for us. It even came up with our first set of quotes, so it's fantastic. All right, you get the gist here. You want to make this edit to quote handler py? Yeah, sure. Okay, it'll probably give us at least a curl command or two to try and test that API. Let's see. Okay, so now it's going to do the Flutter app part. Let's see, project structure. Sure. But it's creating Flutter app. Not so psyched about that name. Let me stop it, and I'm going to do I really didn't want to go this far with it, just randomly, but can you call it? Let's see. question part. There we go. There we go. All right. Now I've used, thanks to Lee recommending it, or at least cluing me into it, Dreamflow recently, and I tend to use that for a first wave Flutter app. I would have probably gone through that tool first, then downloaded what it creates, and then come back over here, because I don't know how, I'll say, stylistic or aesthetically oriented Claude Code's Flutter is. If it looks like crap, I might just do that, and kind of mix the two. But let's see what we have here for our main. Okay, so we can take a look at what's there. I'm sure it's going to look pretty straightforward. Let's see the home page. That's what I really want to see. There's our home page. Title. And you can kind of see that. Okay, that's the stuff that's getting really good. Let's see what the right is. Okay. There we go. So we will get a progress indicator as it's loading or thinking. That's fine. Hopefully we're going to have a couple buttons. There's our quote. That's a private string. Let's see, author. Good. Separate as a separate label. And then, let's see, here is our elevated button. Hopefully it says get quote or something like that, right? There it is. Sorry, I'm reading at the same time I'm talking, and I probably shouldn't. All right, looks good. I'm going to let it go. Again, I did not want to get this far in the first step, but that's fine. This is great. So we're going to be using an HTTP, a package that you can get from pub.dev, which is a Flutter, think of it as the Flutter, package manager location where all this open source stuff that's contributed is put out there, and we use that pretty regularly to just get any kind of components we don't want to build ourselves. Okay, we have a deployment script, so hopefully deployment script will run the template YAML, but we'll check on it all before we do anything. We'll just let it make it for now. And now it's going to make that deployment script executable. I'd like to be a member of the Entropic team that put time into coming up with these different action verbs. All right, let's see. Do you want to make this? I bet Claude actually came up with them. Do you want to make this edit to readme? Sure. I'm not looking at what it has already, but sure. Let's do that. And if you haven't noticed, our structure is being filled out as we've been going here. So there's the Lambda, and there's our quote handler that it wrote, the deployment script, the requirements text, and the template, the CloudFormation template. And then here on the mobile side, we have a much richer, there's a typical of a Flutter project. It automatically creates as if you're going to target all these things, even though I said we only need iOS, but that's okay to have Android, for instance, Mac OS, Linux, all that as well on the web. Okay, let's see. I think it thinks it's all done. So let's scroll back up and see what it says. So it went through its to-do list. Perfect, it says. I've successfully created the complete DCC project with both AWS API and Flutter components. Here's what's been built. And now we have the structure. So it's the thing we were just poking through. That looks all good. Okay, so we do have the quote endpoint. Let's take a look at that code in a second. Python Lambda with 15 inspirational quotes. There you go. And of course, you probably want to reference some sort of database that's got thousands of them, but this is good for our test case. Core is enabled too. Great. That's good. So we'll take a look at that. That'll be in the template YAML. Let's see, error handling, JSON response, blah, 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 blah. Yep. All right, project ready for deployment, you'll need to deploy the AWS stuff and then update the API URL in the Flutter app, right? So right now the code in Flutter probably has like a placeholder for where the API is going to be accessed as far as the actual URL. And then run it with the Flutter run. Let's give that a try. So I'm going to stop here. Maybe we'll look at the README real fast, because it's going to have a lot of stuff in it. There, I don't know which, that's going to be the Flutter app one, I think. So pull that one up, and we'll look at this rooted one here. I do have a way to preview it, so I'll go ahead and put that up too, and we'll just take a look at it together. So this is all written by Claude Code, right? So, well, because we did all that extra stuff, I think we've gone way too long on part one than I wanted to. I was hoping it would be about 2 or 3 minutes long. But anyway, notice here that in the README, it's created a description for both the API and the Flutter app itself. We get given a bit of a project structure as well with it currently. And of course, it won't go in automatically and update that unless we put a rule in place that says every time you change the structure of the project, go back to the README and update the structure. We'll see later that Claude MD implicitly does that very same function. And then finally, there'd be some prerequisites, and in our case, we know that we expect the AWS CLI to be ready to point to the right project, or the right account. Hopefully, we'll do that when we check it out. And then that you have Flutter installed, Xcode installed, and SAM. We're using that for the serverless model. So, we'll just pick it up from here in the next step.